Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. With over 2 decades of experience as a workroom owner and an interior designer, Hope Arbery really understands the realities of running a custom workroom: long hours, pricing uncertainty, and the pressure to get it all right. She founded QUIPA to give workroom owners the tools that she wished she had had, and of course, that I wish I had had: automated yardage and pricing calculations, professional estimates, and systems that bring clarity instead of chaos. Hope is deeply committed to helping workrooms not just survive, but to thrive with confidence, professionalism, and profit. We're going to have an amazing conversation talking about what drove her to create QUIPA, a little bit about it, and the problems that it solves. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hello, Hope. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Michelle, I'm so happy to be here with you.
Oh, I'm excited to have you on. I've been waiting to have this conversation. I know we both have, right? We've talked
Mhm.
about it for a while and just the right timing on everything. Time is so important in any business venture, and timing can make or break a company. It's so interesting. Just an aside before we jump into our conversation. When I have people call me and do discovery calls, sometimes it's just not the right time for us to work together. And I might say to them, go do A and B, or why don't you wait until this point so that it will make more sense and get more out of it. And I think you and I, even when we were trying to schedule the podcast, and we've talked about it over the last year or two, like what is the right time to have this particular conversation? So I'm glad that today is the day and we get to finally have it.
Yes, the time is now.
The time is now. So I hope you're not a stranger to the podcast. You and I have been friends for a very long time. We've coached together and worked together in a multitude of ways with workroom and design, and then even at the beginning of QUIPA. And now you're back on, and we're going to talk a little bit about QUIPA, which is a project management tool for and pricing tool for the drapery workrooms, which is going to make their lives so much easier, along with the lives of the designers and the installers and the others that are ancillary to that process. But before we do that, just if somebody it's their first time hearing, like, who is Hope Arbery, I want them to know a little bit of your background and your journey, because I think it'll make for a richer conversation. When you're saying things, they're going to know that you've been there and done that. And I think that trust goes a long way. So start us out a little bit in your journey and tell us how you got here.
It's been a long journey, but one full of pleasure, but some pain points as well. I owned and operated a drapery workroom for over 20 years. Before that, I was an attorney. When I was at home with my boys on maternity leave, my next door neighbor fell and broke her arm, and she ran a drapery workroom and asked me to help her. And she didn't know at the time, but I had a sewing background, and I just felt I didn't know this could be a career, and I fell in love with it from day one, and I've never looked back. I enjoyed helping her get on her feet and build processes for her. And then eventually I started my own drapery workroom with just me at the beginning in my house. And then it grew and I hired seamstresses, a workroom manager, trained them, and really had the workroom running on its own, which was a great goal and a great achievement to know that I could step away and the workroom would still run with processes in place. And at that point, I even started an interior design firm, a separate entity, and had some junior designers working with me. So I ended up working another area, being on both sides of the coin, both the drapery workroom and the interior designer. So I felt the same, I felt the pain points from both of those perspectives. And one thing I knew over the 20 years, regardless of the size of my workroom or the stage, like how mature it was, I was always struggling with the process problem. I didn't have a product problem or a people problem. I had a process problem. And so, as you know, I worked really hard to build some automated processes, and I built a digital online process for calculating yardages and pricing for my workroom, doing the work orders, automating my instructions to my installer because I found I had been duplicating information in various places, and that was just eating up my profit. And I think a poor process causes poor profits, all those P words.
Yeah, it's for sure.
Um, yeah, a process problem leads to a profit problem.
No doubt. I think that's the first time I ever heard the story about your neighbor falling and breaking her arm. And that was how you began. That's pretty cool. Mine started because a neighbor rang my doorbell and said, "Hey, I have fabric. Will you make for me the window treatments you have in your own home?" I mean, so, God bless neighbors. They, they'll start us in all kinds of businesses.
That's why almost every neighborhood could have a drapery workroom in
That's
it.
right.
There's a need everywhere.
There's a need everywhere. You know what I also find really interesting and parallel in some of our journey is, um, Matrique Solutions that I've built was built out of all of the spreadsheets and all of the calculations that I was doing for both my own business and the businesses that I supported through coaching and education because they needed to know how to do the work. And yours is, a conglomeration of all of the things that you were learning and building and trying to use just to maintain your own business. You and I met, oh gosh, I know we've talked about this multiple times. It was a long, long time ago, like probably 20 years ago, easily. And I remember when you and I first, even before we coached together, I remember being at a local Atlanta WCAA meeting and you telling me about the online system that you had built to, you know, um, calculate and to make streamline some of the processes. And I don't know if you remember this, but when we were coaching together on the interiors business and the workroom business, I remember saying to you, "Hope this keeps coming up," because you weren't building QUIPA at the time. And I kept saying, "Hope, over the years, this keeps coming up over and over and over." And I remember just like one of those, I almost call it like that moment of truth. I was like, where is God really calling your heart to step out here? Because you had multiple businesses. And as somebody who has had more than one business running at a time, that in itself is a big drain on resources, our own personal resources. And I don't just mean money, I mean time, energy, the whole thing. It's a lot. And you were trying to do both really well, be profitable in all the places. You had young kids still at home. So there was a lot of stretching, a lot of Gumby moments where being stretched. And I just remember asking you, where is your heart? Because I felt like this strong pull to where something you couldn't let go. Like you just couldn't let it go. You know what I mean? It wasn't like you just put it on the shelf and walked away. You tried that, but you could not let it go. And you, in that moment, I actually feel it in my body while I'm saying it. Yeah, it feels emotional. I remember in that moment, you looked at me and you said, "The pain of not making money in a business for these people that are working so hard keeps me up at night. It bothers me." You knew how to make money in design. You knew how to make money in workroom. You had worked through a lot of it on your own to build these processes and procedures within an automated system. And you felt pain, like emotion, like even I feel it. I guess because our work is so parallel, right? For years of me serving creatives, like all the way back in 2007 and 8, that were working and they were trying to bring in a dollar to pay for their homes and pay for their kids to go to college and just keep food on the table. And they were busting their rear ends working. And it's such a physically exhaustive job, to schlep books around for interiors or to do the same thing for workroom. And I mean, I ripped up both my shoulders lifting heavy fabrics and, rotator cuff injuries, like, and upholstery. All of these things are so taxing on us. And I just remember your heart at, I can solve this problem. Like I can solve this particular piece of the problem. And you made a decision not long after that. You pushed back on me a little bit there because it was a pivot point. Or not on me. I think you pushed back more on the idea because it was going to require a really big investment from you of your time, your effort, your energy, your money, and your direction. And then when you made it, like you said, there's up and down, left and right, smacks here and there, but your heart has been in it the whole time. I don't know that I've ever gotten this emotional on a podcast, but I just,
If
I
they
mean,
could only see you now crying.
I know, I'm like doing my best to choke it back, but I just remember your heart that day. And you don't see that like that. When people talk about, and I lead how many people to find their why? Yours was so glaring that it literally pulled me in.
Yeah, it brings back, I mean, I feel the emotion too. And I remember thinking like God has given me this experience. I have invested this much time. And how can I be a good steward of it? Do
Right.
I just keep it in my business knowing that other businesses need this help? Or do I try to help other businesses with this one piece that I can do so they can keep growing their businesses? I think one reason it was hard for me to make that decision to go all in and close my workroom and my interior design firm is I felt responsible for the people who were working for me.
Mhm.
But the Lord provided for them. Some of them started their own workrooms, some of them went to work for other workrooms, and some of them are still with me today, helping on the software side. So it all worked out. I shouldn't have been fearful of that, but that did hold me back for a while, just
Yeah,
worrying about
carrying the
that.
weight I mean, and let's just talk about that for a second, because I think as business owners, we do carry the weight of the people that are in our employ, regardless of the type of business we have. And so when we can't process through and create the profits, we have a hard time paying them. You felt it on the other side of, I can do this, but now I'm going to be switching our business. I think it's just that it's the weight of good management and leadership in a company.
And I think another reason for the emotional part of it, and you probably feel this too, Michelle, is our industry is really special in that people are creative. And I think, God created us to be creative and to work. Like work is good, and people in our industry do enjoy working, but they pour themselves into it. It's a piece of them.
Yes.
When you make something custom or you're designing something custom, you never forget it. It's a piece of art, and I don't know, it becomes it's a part of you. And so that's very different, I think, than other industries.
I agree. I agree 100%. It as much as we are always separating out the personal from the business, there is some amount of a tie there that I think never goes away. Because when people are buying from us in these industries, they're buying the way we see the world through the art that we create, that is, the design of a kitchen or the window treatment for the family room or the bedding for the bedroom or whatever it is that we're doing. It all carries into those homes. So you made the decision to follow your heart. And I do remember that the software that you had built for yourself, and I'm going to use the term software kind of lightly because it's a little bit more of a hybrid, but it was built for pretty much like one user, one company. And so you knew that to build this for the masses was going to be a complete rewrite, because the one user, one company, I mean, you were already using it, nobody else was going to have access to it. So you knew that there was going to be a lot that went into it. And What's so awesome to me is that you decided to follow that dream all the way through. And like you said, it's taken a bit to get it to where you have it now. Um, but what do you see the biggest challenges that workroom owners have now that you think threaten their profitability, that threaten their day to day and their survival, right?
Yeah, just really being able to modernize and um, fix their process problem. There's new workrooms coming onto the scene. One of
So thankful for that, right?
21 and 23 years old, and they're starting, and they're not going to do it on paper and pencil. They have to have a tool. So they're coming on and requiring that. But if for an established workroom, if they want to sell one day, or if they want to pass it down to a daughter or a granddaughter or a son or one of their workers, they've got to have a process for that. So in order to keep going and to keep up with today's world, they've got to get modernized. And really in the process, I mean, the future really belongs to workrooms with modern estimating and project management,
Yeah.
because that's where the bottleneck is. And it is an information bottleneck. So if you look at our industry, which I'll call the custom soft furnishings industry, there are a lot of players and there's a lot of communicating. There's the installer, interior designer, homeowners, workroom, and the suppliers. And if they're all modernizing, so if a workroom is not modernizing, they're not going to be able to communicate back and forth. And for instance, interior designers will quietly quit a workroom, even if they've had a long-standing relationship with them. They like them a lot. They do great work. They're very skilled. But if their estimates are a mess or they take too long and they really hinder the interior designer from doing her job, then they're going to look for a workroom that can meet that need and get a fast estimate to them. So that's kind of an example of workrooms really needing to modernize in today's industry.
So I'll tell you something that I see on this side of it, having owned my own workroom, done some light design, and then moved into the educational and coaching space. Having coached workrooms, here's what I hear. The hardest thing to teach and to hand over is the amount of work it takes to put together an estimate. Because let's be real, and this is good education whether you're on the interior side or the workroom side. Most workrooms, when they give you an estimate, it's a fine detailed estimate. It's not a rough range, right? That's a whole different thing, meaning they are literally having to calculate how much yardage, what the repeat is, where the rings are going to go, where they're cutting out on the fabric, how much they're doing. Their goal is we got to touch this once. And because you're not only asking me the cost, aka price, you're asking me quantity of raw product, which means I've got to sit down and think about the raw product, how that raw product is coming to me, length, width, vertical repeat, horizontal repeat. Where's this? Where's that? Where's the motif? How do I place it here? Like there's so much that goes into those quotes that's not a solid fabric, all the way down to it's a velvet. It needs to be hand done, or do I have a velvet board to do this so I don't crush it? Like there's so much that goes into it. It's not a straight take this product, mark it up 50% and move on about your day. That is not what it looks like from the workroom ministry. And so many of these workrooms, that's the last thing they ever hand off or teach, because a couple of things happen. Number one, not everybody can think that way. They really can't. It is a high level of executive functioning. Number two, if you have not lived it and cannot anticipate what might happen with a specific type of fabric or how it's going to behave or the extra hand stitching or memory stitching that needs to go with it, you could get upside down very quickly if you don't understand that the fabric needs to be stabilized. So there is so much, I'm just saying, that goes into that estimate up front before they ever get the job or the promise of the money, that it behooves them to take it slowly enough to calculate for every little thing. But the problem is on the design side, they don't necessarily have that time, want to give that time, understand that it takes that long. And so there's a disconnect between, for me to give you what you need. Otherwise, I'm going to have to keep coming back and going, I need more tile. I need more this. I need more that, right? Just like if you were the tile guy, I need more, I need more, I need more. And we can put up with that. But we don't feel that way when I need more fabric, I need more trim. It can ruin a whole job if it's not one length of something. So I I I want everybody to hear that estimating and pricing and quantification of raw material is a big stinking deal. It's a big deal. And then you got to get it right. And so if we go through all of that, where it's all going to be done, we have to have a way to capture it. Otherwise, if we sell the job and it comes back to us, we got to go back and think through the whole thing all over again before we get it on a work order to go do it. So now we've wasted time thinking through it for the estimate, not capturing all of it, having to think through it a second time. That's what I ran into, to now go do it. Well, if I think through it the second time differently than the first time, I may not have what I like. There's just a lot that goes into that. And I say that because, again, handing that off to somebody is the scariest point, because if it gets it wrong, everything's wrong from that point forward. And so they don't want to hand it off. Right. And with a system, you can hand it off, you can teach, you can train. But if you can't literally feel like you could take your analytical brain out and give it to somebody that was new, I will tell you that would scare the pants off most workroom owners.
And you're right to look at it from two viewpoints. So for the workroom, they this is where their margins are built if they don't price it right, and
Correct.
they're gathering the details. And with QUIPA, they can put in their defaults, or this is the way I think, and these are the questions. So
Their
there's
tolerances, all the things.
yes. And um, on the designer side, so we've also come out with another tool, and this is for designers and workrooms. So you don't have to be a subscriber to QUIPA to use it, but it is an RFP that just walks you through all of the steps. And so if a designer is using it, then they have the questions. They don't have the stress of, oh, what does my workroom need? Oh, did I tell them this is an approximate finish length, but they need to go back and measure it. And do I have to put in the pleat right now? Like all of those questions, because the interior designer is trying to get to the workroom what they need so they can do the quote.
Right.
There's stress on both sides and uncertainty.
Absolutely. And the quickness of trying to, number one, get the sale while the fabric is available. That's the other piece I hear. So they've got to get it quickly and while the client's willing to make a decision. So there's like this speed that also goes into it.
Oh, absolutely. Because you don't want to lose your momentum and you don't want that fabric to be discontinued, or at the beginning, the designer doesn't know how many yards she needs. So
Right.
maybe they only have 50 yards in stock and she needs 60. That's why they need it fast, because from the designer's perspective, if they don't get an estimate fast, they do lose momentum. They have all their other pricing will even take a step back. They need to budget. They think, oh, I have $50,000 to work with, and I need to start planning my budget before they even go out and select the fabric. So they
Right.
need an idea of what the drapery is going to cost. And like you said, right now, without a system, it takes too much of an expert knowledge and too much experience for someone to do it. So the designer and the workroom become the bottleneck. They can't hand it off. And with a system like QUIPA, it protects their time and it protects their expertise, because they can use the tool and the software to do the calculations so they don't waste a lot of time, whether they win the job or not.
You know, I'm a very quick calculator. We've all established that.
You're good with numbers.
I'm good with them. I think in numbers. And I remember when I was doing beta testing at the very beginning of QUIPA, and I knew how fast I worked. And QUIPA could match me, if not outperform me. And I was shocked. And I knew that I worked that fast because I teach it. So I mean, I'm one of the few that is like repeatedly trying to do it. And I remember being wowed. But here's the thing, when I would do it and do it so fast, like personally, I then would check myself 2 or 3 times just to make sure that it came out right. And that was what was so nice about QUIPA, is putting in those constraints or those tolerances or those allowances. There are multiple ways, different words for what it is you're doing. But I could say, like, I want 8 inch on the turned bottom hem or 8 inch here. I mean, you can put that in there and it automatically would take into account all of those variables that we had put into it, plus the tolerances of how I ran my workroom. And not every workroom runs it the same. That's why I've been in a situation years ago where a designer brought me fabric for something that another workroom had quoted, but I didn't have enough fabric for the way that I fabricated. They may have had enough for how they planned it, but not for how I planned it. And I didn't do the original estimates. And so that's why it's so important when we are doing even that first estimate to know how we thought about it so that when it all comes in, we have enough to do it that way. But QUIPA is fast. Before we go further, why don't we go ahead and tell people what QUIPA is? Because I think we kind of jumped into that. So why don't we take a step back and tell them? So you developed, just to bring them on the story, after Michelle cried on the podcast and we decided how much Hope loved the solution for other people, you decided to start QUIPA, or to start a software platform, right? A SaaS solution for drapery workrooms that would allow them to price and to quote and to kind of have that communication hub so that they could put their processes and all in one place along with their pricing that would create the work orders and all the things. And you named it QUIPA. So tell us a little more about QUIPA and what it does. And then I got some more questions for you.
And QUIPA is an acronym. It stands for Quick Intelligent Project Assistant. So it's like a workroom has a project assistant, and they train it because when you set up your settings in QUIPA, you put in your pricing, your construction standards, you put in how you like to do your estimates. Do you like to bundle them? Do you like everything as a separate line item? Do you like to display full details of what you're making, or do you give the bare minimum information? So you set it up the way you run your workroom. And once you put in the project details, it takes about 1 minute. And in 1 minute, you have your yardage calculations done, your pricing calculations done. It's exported to QuickBooks, ready to send to your client the way you like it. And your work order is done, and it's put into a project management table. So all of those things take about a minute. All 5 of those things done in 1 minute. And think about revisions. Like if you have to make one revision.
Can you change this one thing? Oh, that used to be the worst. Like I would just want to beat my head against the wall. Can you take this one trim off or add this one trim on this one thing? And you're just like, no, no, please don't make me go look at that again.
Or you have to change the fabric because they checked.
Yeah. And now the yardage or the repeat is different.
Yes.
Oh,
So you go in, edit, make one change, and then it changes across the board. So it's changed in your project management table. It's changed on your work order. You know you've got the latest and greatest information. Plus, when other people are helping you and work with you, they know where to find the information. They don't have to go hunt you down. It's not in your head. It's not in a binder. Everyone is pulling from the same information. So QUIPA is the whole life cycle of a project for any custom product. And also, if you sell woven shades or you purchase some products and resell them, those as well. And then the requests for proposal, the RFP that I mentioned, is a separate program that designers and workrooms can use just to get all of the details of the project in an organized way, in a simple way. It just makes it so much easier. That very first step of, I need draperies in this room and I want to use this fabric, all the basic things. I interviewed lots and lots of designers and workrooms, and I mean, every day I'm talking to either a designer or a workroom, as you probably are too. And everyone has a different way of doing it. Some designers send texts, some do paper orders. I mean, it's all over the place.
All over the board.
And so workrooms are getting information coming from all different places. So this is just a really streamlined way of collecting everything, very simple and easy. So I'm excited for designers to be using that so they can get their information to workrooms and just help in that way. If it's all about the information flow, and the better the information captured at the beginning is so much better for everyone else. I looked at a project that I did. There were 141 emails back and forth. So this is a big complaint from both interior designers and workrooms.
Yes.
Too much back and forth because designers are trying to remember what information to give. And then workrooms have to come back. If that's in an email, then how does anybody in the office find that information?
And what's the latest email and which one do we go with? And
Yes.
I've seen a lot of discord around that over the years, and felt the tension there when if the workroom didn't have a list of here's exactly what I need and this is what you need to fill out or this is what I need to ask you, information either didn't get asked, or like you said, it came in 140 emails. There were some, and then what would happen is at the end, it would be made based on email number 133 and not email 140. Because there were pieces that got lost in translation. There was too much. And then the cost. Here's the other cost to the workroom. You get three-quarters of the way done, and then you realize you didn't get an answer. Do you want that banding on the lead edge, or inset by an inch, or inset by 2 inches? And now this entire project is taking up space on your table. You have to stop, go find a designer who may not remember, or has, maybe they have or have not even thought about it yet. You got to go get them, pull them out of whatever they're in, try to get an answer while you have a seamster or a seamstress sitting there wasting their time. And there is a cost as a workroom to take that work off your table, to put something else on your table, to put it back on. There are deadlines, but there's the cost of an unused or a wasted table space. And so it just, when we talk about the momentum of the designer, this disrupts the momentum of the workroom. They cannot complete and finish the work. And when you get, it's like with anything, you get yourself out of it, then to get yourself back into it and refamiliarize yourself is another cost of time. And so making sure to get that information up front is crucial to helping the information flow, but then the workflow through, the company the way that it needs to.
Yes, I think most interior designers and workrooms underestimate how much time they spend with the back and forth and how costly it is to do the estimates and to communicate the information, because it's spread across so many places and across
Right.
so much time, but it just eats away at your profit.
For years, we've seen project management tools for the design industry, like too many to even name, and they're popping up every day. Like we've seen them. We've seen them even get bought out and absorbed and, renamed and all the things because we recognize the amount of decisions that the designers are making. But when you go downstream and you look at just downstream from the project and you look at the workrooms, there is again an inordinate amount of decisions that need to be made. And we have been a little bit later as a subset of the overall custom home furnishings industry to be modernized. And, without naming names, there are a couple of fabric companies that a couple of years ago merged, and they did not have their systems modernized at all. And I can remember ordering fabric, and they sent me double of all the fabric, two separate shipments with all the fabric. And we wonder why they weren't making any money. Well, it was because everything had been manually. Everything, nothing had been modernized. They didn't have it online. It was, we get upset. You and I've been in the business long enough. I remember when everything was by catalog. There was no online. Like if you had a company that was willing to put some of their products online on a website, we thought they were trailblazers because it just wasn't done. So you had to look everything up through a catalog, get a number, and then you had to call or you had to fax, right? Do you remember those days calling? In fact, I had a service called MyFax, and I was faxing and all that. And then you got to the point where everything went online. And this particular industry, what we did was we all moved to from pen and paper to some of us moved to an Excel type spreadsheet calculator. I know many companies have built some of their own internal tools because they had to, desperation. They had to build it. The cost of doing that math over and over and over and not forgetting anything. Maybe they've updated their QuickBooks to work in a certain way. And then they all started moving into now I've got to manage projects. So they were moving into things like Airtable. They were moving into Google spreadsheets and Google Docs, like just trying to find a way to organize the information. And then the challenge became we're organizing the pricing and the money over here. We're organizing the process here. We're organizing the communication over here. We're organizing the financials over here in QuickBooks. Everything was organized in air quotes, but very disparate, very separate from each other, not in a connected way, so that when you make a change here, it ripples, which meant that if you made a change here, you had to stop and go make a change here, and you got to stop and go make it here and stop and go make it there, and then follow up with the 150th email. And so, what's so nice about the way that you have worked through with your team and Design QUIPA is that you can make that one change, and there's a ripple effect that it hits everything. Just the cost of not only building processes but managing disparate processes. I mean, that was the whole reason that Matrique was made, is because I had so many individualized spreadsheets that did not work together because they were built at different times, that to change something here, I had to go change it in 14 places. By the time I had to do all that, I didn't even know what I was changing and why I was changing. I couldn't remember what I'd updated and what I hadn't. And then it just created another cascade of frustration. Um, so let me ask you this. QUIPA, is it built for the small workroom, the large workroom? I mean, I know the answer, but I'm asking it so that everybody can hear you say it. Like, what workroom did you build it for?
So it's for all work rooms, regardless of size or stage. And we have users who are solopreneurs, just somebody working out of their home. And then we have larger work rooms that are very established that may have 30 seamstresses in their business. And then several different business models as well. There's a lot of workrooms who work with other workrooms who farm things out.
Right.
They may specialize in one area, but another workroom will help them with parts of their production. So QUIPA works for all of those, and intentionally we built it for small, medium, and large workrooms.
I remember thinking about when you were talking about QUIPA back at the beginning, your comment was making it accessible to everybody. And when we're talking about the cost of doing business, most workrooms, their internal cost of an hour, right? Not necessarily the external cost of the hour that they might charge a designer or a homeowner, but their internal charges. These days, I would say on the low end is like 65 an hour up, right? So it's 65 an hour to 150 an hour based on how large the team is and the overhead and all the things that have to be done. When you look at it's taking you, I mean, I've got some workrooms that I've worked with that were taking them a week to quote a house, a week to quote a house, because you're talking multiple treatments, multiple layers, multiple rooms, multiple fabrics. It's a lot of time. So if you're talking 40 hours to quote, right? Even at 65, what is that? 40 times 65. That's $2,600 just to quote it without ever being paid, because most workrooms are not paid to quote up front. We get our money after the sale comes through and then we take the deposit to get going. So most of these people, that is a work week that did not get paid in advance, that the client slash designer can come back and say no to, can come back and say, I don't want that. And there's no way to recoup that $2,600 without raising your rates to everybody else. Or they come back and they want to make four changes. And then you have that feeling of, oh, I got to go look at that again. I got to go back through it. It's not just quick and easy, it's not fast, and it's not cheap. And so when you look at the investment into something like QUIPA, and I don't mean just a monthly investment or a subscription investment, that certainly that, but even the investment in setting it up one time for how you work and how you do business. And then you're looking at minutes. Now, it may take you a couple of minutes to enter the data, but then to get a resulting answer in a minute. And when you couple that with an RFP that says, here's all the information I need for every window. So now I don't have to go chase you down to get the answers, homeowner slash designer. You're going to give me the answers, but you're going to know what it is you need to get. So I'm not keeping you in the dark. I'm going to tell you this is exactly what I need. Now I've got the data. I can sit down and enter it. And in minutes, from the beginning to the end, have an answer. You could take that 40-hour work week and narrow it way down, right? Then we're talking minutes per window or per types of treatments that you're doing in a space. You could, I mean, it still probably would give you time to take a couple of ice cream breaks and water breaks and half a spa day, but you could get it all done in one day versus 5 days. And I would challenge half a day if you had all the data sitting there in front of you to be able to thoughtfully enter everything and go through it. That cost savings is amazing because now I don't have to hire another person just to sit down to keep up with estimates.
Oh, absolutely. I always think I lowball it even at $50 an hour if it costs the company. Of course, if you're paying someone, it costs your company more than whatever their salary is, right? Because you're
Right.
paying taxes and you're paying all these other things to have an
Yes.
employee. So even lower than you if you're paying someone $50 an hour or you're wanting to make that, and you spend half of your time doing estimates, so 20 hours a week. Well, that's $50,000 a year that
Yep.
you're spending doing estimates and revisions, right? Because without a system, every time you do a revision, you have to get your head around the
You got to
project
start all
again.
over again
You
practically.
rebuild it from scratch and double check everything and make sure you're not making a costly mistake.
Yep.
That's stressful. And I ask people, do you double check? And they're like, no, I triple check.
Yeah. We triple check because now if I do it and get the same answer, but I always miss something one time in there, hit the wrong number, the calculator didn't add it, you know what I mean? We're going fast. So we're triple checking.
One of our users said she was doing a big estimate that normally would take 20 hours. So if you worked 8 hours a day and did nothing else, right? You didn't answer
Right.
the phone, you didn't talk to a client, you sat there for 2.5 days working on estimate. And she said, as a new user with QUIPA, it took her 3 hours. Well, that you'd have it done before lunch. And then, you could take Friday off if you wanted to.
That's right. A spa day and ice cream that I talked about. I think that's just like the power of the technology, right? First of all, we now have the technology that can come into our hands that allow us to do that. I was talking to our kids not too long ago, and we were talking about, we're in the age now of grandchildren and all of that, which I love and adore. But we were talking about like when I was a young mom and, was working in software and had my kids, and I told them I couldn't come home and work from home. This whole idea of us working from home, we could not do it. We didn't have the technology, we didn't have the speed, we didn't have the home setups that allowed us to do that. The closest we had was job sharing, where you might go into the office and work 2.5 physical days in the office, and somebody else would work 2.5 physical days. But most of the time, the managers weren't willing to split everything among two people. They just wanted one person to come in and do it. So the opportunities were not really there to serve. To serve us being able to do it that way. Well, now when you look at the speed of transactions, the speed of computing, I mean, heck, we're doing it now with watches, with glasses, the meta glasses, with our phones. Like when you're paying thousands of dollars for a phone because it's a mini computer in your hands, we have this opportunity. And while I love pen and paper, I don't think we'll ever get rid of pen and paper, to some degree. It really does slow us down when we have the capacity for a small investment to have that amount of computing at our fingertips. I mean, people are now going into Chat GPT and just typing in, hey, tell me how to do this. And I think that's good. But one thing I want to caution, if somebody's thinking, I don't need a SaaS solution, I'll just go type it into Chat GPT, you might be able to get an answer, but it is not going to tie it back into your work order. It's not going to tie it back into your project management system or task system. It is not going to tie it back into your QuickBooks. Not yet, maybe one day, but right now that is not what it is doing. And so having that ability to streamline the information flow, streamline the workflow, and then be profitable in the process, it is like this beautiful opportunity that we just have not had before in this particular industry in this way.
And it just opens up the door for so much more possibility of growth. I mean, you can hire people, people can work remotely. You don't Workroom owners right now are carrying home binders and stacks of paper, and then they can't get an answer because they have to go back to the office to look somewhere else. You can just have it all in one place no matter where you are. And it really opens up a lot of possibilities for the workroom owner, for the designer, and for anybody they want to hire. And
Yeah,
delegating.
yeah, for sure. Right. What have been some of the aha moments or some of the, other than the 20 hours to 3 hours? That's a pretty big aha. What have been some of the others that your early adopters and those that have been on QUIPA for a while now? What are some of the things that I know my aha was, wow, that was fast and it was right. And that's important. It was fast and it was right.
Yeah, I think a lot of workroom owners have found that they have made very costly mistakes. And when fabric costs $100 a yard, like that's just
On the low end these days.
yeah, yeah. So when I hear that they're like, oh, I would have made that mistake if I had done it, or I've made this mistake in the past and now I know I won't make that mistake anymore. That is an aha moment. But also, I was particularly encouraged when one workroom owner who didn't want to let go of control, right? Because she had been doing it her whole life and was very scared, but she had a workroom manager who knew the workroom. She'd never been on a computer. She wasn't a computer person, but she knew how to make things. Well, this workroom owner wanted the workroom manager to start doing the estimates and the work orders and managing on QUIPA. She was able to, the workroom owner who'd never been a computer person, learn the system easily and manage the workroom. And now the workroom owner can take Fridays off and her workroom still runs. She can go into QUIPA and have a high level view of everything that's going on in the workroom. She can sort and see, like, these are all my projects. Oh, I can see my upcoming installs. I can see everything that's been ordered or what I'm waiting on. Like, see what's going on, check on things, and they can message each other back and forth. And but she is able to let go of the estimating and the work orders and the project management piece of it, which is great. So now she goes out, meets with the clients, measures, brings in the work, and manages the business, and somebody else can do the tedious, project by project oversight, where before she was doing all of it, which
Yep.
is unsustainable.
It's unsustainable. I think that brings up another good point, and that is the intuitiveness. And I know that you have worked really, really hard to make QUIPA intuitive so that, like, for that particular workroom manager, maybe having not had a background in technology for workrooms or technology for things like that, to be able to get in, because the nomenclature that you use are words that are very natural and normal to most workrooms. And then there's a glossary if you don't understand, like if there's a naming problem. But it's very straightforward so that it can be simplified enough. Here's the thing, I think it's simplified enough that you can understand it, but it's the complexity is in what it does for you. So you didn't make it so complex that when you look at it, you're overwhelmed. I can remember some of the sheets we used to fill out when we would go to a measure, and there were so many boxes on that sheet that I'm like, I need four numbers, and you're asking me to fill in 65. Like that was overwhelming to me. I need four of the 65 available boxes. And so that was almost overly complex for what needed to be a bit more simplified. I'm certain there were times that it needed to be that complex, but in the day to day it didn't. Um, and so I love
It could
that.
be dynamic.
It
It
could
could,
be. It
it
could
could
very
not, that couldn't have been dynamic when it's on paper.
no,
But for a program, if you
it
select
can be.
stationary, then I can ask you how many widths, or if it's functional, I can ask you the rod length, but I don't have to have every question for every
On
possible.
one page. Right, right. And that's what I think is so wonderful about it is it gives an opportunity to not get overwhelmed with detail that we don't need, but not to forget the details that we do need.
And to have pictures and images. That makes it a lot easier too.
And then to tie into estimates and invoices, like, hello, Holy
And the
Grail
pictures
here.
and images can go onto the work order. So whoever's making it, like they're very clear of what that pleat should look like.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, I can tell you, I coach some workrooms that work with QUIPA, and some of them have been around since the beginning, and they have seen the morphing of QUIPA from a minimum viable product to a really full embodied product. That has been amazing. They're all just raving, and they're talking about how every day they go in there and there's something new that is just enhancing their life in the drapery workroom and giving them more freedom and giving more detail or more color to the project that they're working on. And so they have really amazing things to say, and they're in it daily. Like they're constantly in there seeing how it's changing the way they do business and simplifying some things for them to buy back their time. I mean, and profitability is also about how we spend our time. So for them to get time back, like you said, to have that Friday off to do what they want to do, um, I think is just tremendous. Or to not have to hire that other person or to reallocate a resource somewhere else instead of there. Like there's so many ways that the time or the resources can be used when they're so streamlined like that.
Well, I have to give a big shout out to my team for working so hard and having all of these new features popping up all the time. We call it shipping a lot. So we're trying to ship a lot of new features, and I'm so excited for the ones that are coming. But we have a team of 17 people. That's how many people it takes to build the software. As you know, it can be very complex on the backside. And yeah, every day we're working to find the next feature. And the people who are in it every day, we talk to them regularly. We get their feedback. Like, what is the next thing that is a priority for you that you need?
Right.
So there's still more great stuff to come.
I love it. So, if you could give one piece of advice, Hope, to a owner who feels overwhelmed or who feels like I don't know what to do next or I'm stuck or there's just so many details, how do I get myself out of even the system that I've hobbled and cobbled together? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say get on QUIPA and let us help you because we do one-on-one training. It takes about 6 hours to get all of your settings set up for your workroom and then get in and start playing with it. I there's no way to improve the process without letting go of the old one and trying the new one. But our joy is helping people get to that place. And so we walk with them along the way, and there's never a question that's too small or too big as they're learning it. So at the beginning, we often get a lot of questions, and we have, I think, just tremendous
You have really good
service.
support. You
Yep,
do.
because the people who do it, they know the product, they know the technology, but we also know workrooms. And at the beginning, they're going to have questions, and the more questions they ask, the faster they learn it, and then they're off and running. And unless we're talking to them about a new feature, like, hey, try this new feature, give us your feedback, they're not contacting us because they learn how to use it on their own, and they're
Yeah.
off and running.
All right. So, personal question. With the hope of 2016, could she even have seen what this would look like today? 17 people, an amazing application that took its hits all along, but that has morphed into something more than just a quick estimating tool, because this is so much more than a quick estimating tool.
Mhm.
How does that feel? Like 10 years out?
Yeah, I definitely have always had the vision, like I knew what was needed and what was possible. I just didn't see the twists and turns and what it would take to get here because I'd never built a software company before.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was finding the right people and having them in the right seats on the bus. Um, and now I have a great team, and that's really why we're able now to move so quickly. Because even the people who are coding, they know a lot about workrooms now. They've learned it, and they really
More than
care
they
about
ever
workrooms.
thought they would know. They can go say, I know how to calculate that.
So I just love like being able now to have a tool and to go to workrooms and interior designers and be like, I can help you. I think about it, it's a lot like the sewing machine. I think that the software is the greatest invention in our industry since the sewing machine. Because, before the sewing machine, you could have somebody who's really skilled at sewing and they could do 35 stitches a minute. And you could say, you need to be faster. You need to be more productive. And they'd be like, okay, I can only do 35 stitches a minute.
That's right.
Then you give them a sewing machine, a tool, and they can do 3,000 stitches a minute. Well, it's kind of the same with estimating and all the project management. Like they can only do it so fast if they're manually
That's
calculating or
exactly right.
going here or there, but you give them the tool, the right tool, and they can do it so much faster and do what they need to do in their business. So I love seeing that.
I'm going to say this before we wrap up. I've seen workrooms that had all the tools from a machinery standpoint, and the bottleneck is still the quoting and the estimating. They've got the vertical tablers, they've got the pleating machines, they've got like every machine known to man, and some that we can hardly even fathom. Right? They've got one. I've saw one or talked to somebody the other day that they've got a machine that literally puts the pleats in a Roman shade that can make like 8 Roman shades in an hour. Like it's crazy what these machines can do. And the bottleneck is still in the estimating and the quoting and the work orders and the process of the management of the item as it flows through the company. And so that is the next big place that has to be like we've addressed the physical machinery tools. Now there's no more like you can only do what you can do. I cannot do it any faster at that point. So the only thing that I can do is get it through the process faster.
It's the number one problem. Yeah, the process problem, not the
Process.
product or the people.
Right, it's process. They say 85% of our problems are process problems, 15% are people, but we tend to think 85% are people and 15% are process. But it really is process first. And so I really appreciate what you have done with QUIPA, your intentionality and your perseverance to get it to market in such a beautiful way should be applauded. And so I am here still continuing 10 years later to cheer for you, to cheer for QUIPA, to cheer for the workrooms that have an opportunity to have something that we didn't have so that we were doing the 40 hours when we could have done it in 3 to 6. So I'm excited for the workrooms that are willing to adopt and to adapt to move forward with technology. So thank you again for that.
Well, thank you, Michelle, for all that you do for our industry. You work on all kinds of processes on the financial side, which is super important as well.
Yeah,
We're tackling two different problems, but for the same people. We love the same industry.
we do. We do. So, Hope, where can people find you? Where can they follow along, see more about what QUIPA has to offer for them?
Well, I would say for both interior designers and workrooms to go to quipa.com, so QUIPA.com, and there you can get the free RFP. Try it out with your workroom and your designers. And then if a workroom wants a demo, they can sign up for a demo, a one-on-one demo for QUIPA. And then we're also on Instagram, which is my QUIPA.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for our conversation today. I really enjoyed every bit of it.
Oh, me too. Nice to see you, Michelle. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Hope. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Hope, thank you so much for joining us today. I really hope that if you're listening, that you'll check out what Hope and her team have built over at QUIPA. And, profit is a choice. It doesn't happen by accident. You've heard me say that on this podcast in some form for over 8 years. And the reason I say it is because it is true. And I want to invite you to take time to look at where you're at in your business. Where are you losing profit in your company? And then consider and check out the tools, coaching, and education throughout this industry that could help and support you. We would love to also serve you here at Scarlet Thread Consulting. You can go to scarletthreadconsulting.com, check out the Work With Me page, and sign up for a discovery call. We can always have a chat and look at what it is that you need next. And as always, choose to be profitable because profit doesn't happen by accident. Profit is a Choice is proud to be part of the designnetwork.org, where you can discover more design media reaching creative listeners. Thanks for listening and stay creative and business minded.